then, yes. And then these are the 4 stages of micropropagation. The initiation of the aseptic culture, shoot multiplication, rooting, and transplant into soil. Stage 1, this is where you get the aseptic shoot. Stage 3, or callus and starting the formation. Stage 3, or stage 2. Stage 3 is when you start to have the plant actually getting ready into magenta box. Stage 4, tomatoes. And this is like one of the best things from like few of these leaves. Like if you have a tomato that you really want to save, and it's like dying because you did research and you messed up, and you need to get more plants off of it, you can actually go through and regenerate the plant without actually, messing it up too bad. I haven't had to do that yet.
Yeah,
but
you might.
I got close a few times, but not there yet. Okay. So basically, what you have to consider for tissue culture or micropropagation media has to be really specific. Although we have like a general mix that you can use without any like issues, you can get really specific media for specific plants for the best performance, the fastest, everything. Environmental, you don't want to cook your plants, you don't want to freeze them. You want to make sure you provide enough light. And browning of callus can usually occur due to oxidation, due to phenolic compounds.
Can you explain that just a little bit more?
Yeah. Basically,
like what about stage 1 and browning?
Stage 1.
What is the browning in stage 1?
Browning in stage. Sir, can you?
Like the callus just gets decolored, or what?
Okay, I think we have. Look at the. Like, you can see some of the browning on there. Basically, as it uses up, like over here, as the callus uses up the nutrients from the media, it can create compounds that, since it's a closed system, they can get toxic. That's why you need to move the callus every 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Browning isn't good. Browning's not
No, browning is not good. You want to avoid that. And there are some benefits of the micropropagation. And I think we're gonna have a short break after this, so you guys can ask questions. And yeah. So basically, you can propagate a large number of plants real fast. It's a lot faster. Like I said, I can reproduce hundreds of plants in 2 months instead of spending 2 weeks, or instead of spending 2 years to get the same amount of plants. It's pathogen-free. You are not actually limited by season. I had to grow corn in the greenhouse this winter. It was not fun. Let me tell you, it is not fun. You don't want to grow corn in the greenhouses. And sometimes you need to. This is a lot easier. Long-term storage, like I said, every 3 months you have to move it to a new media, but otherwise you are not really limited by space or anything. And breeding programs, double haploid, maintaining heterozygous lines, a lot easier. You don't have to worry about cross-contamination, pollinate, anything like that. So conventional propagation benefits, minimal equipment cost. I would argue with that depending on what you are doing and how big you are. You don't need a lot of experience, inexpensive. It's a little bit of a trade-off because you need to spend more space. Heating a greenhouse when it's really cold outside can get really expensive. And, you can get like growth chambers or something like that, high tunnels for grafting, thing like that. Disadvantages for micropropagation: you need to be trained and you need specialized equipment. Kind of. Instead of an autoclave, you can use a pressure cooker. I mean, it's gonna slow you down, but if you're not doing a lot, just small amounts, that's gonna be fine. You need a lot more expertise. You wanna avoid contamination, right? You need protocol for each species, and people who have specific protocols, they might not willing to share it just because they spend a lot of money on it. If you look up some literature, you might be able to find some, but not for like large production. Labor, it's some more expensive since you need to have someone who's actually what they are doing, or just hire college kids.
Yes, do they usually want people with degrees to do this, or do they get?
So for research, yes, propagation, I would say probably you need to pay a little bit more than you would ideal, like, you know, just with someone who's like, but I don't think there is like that much of a labor cost difference, especially like it says 50 to 85, but when you pay 15 instead of 10 to a college kid or something, you know, like, especially you can get a lot more. Stage 2 is repeated cutting, transferring. So you wanna make sure that you keep everything, rooting, transplanting into soil. Like the last one is probably the least expensive. Yeah. Because you don't need to be specific. You don't need specific training to do that. But stage 2 is like you wanna have the callus transferred when it starts to produce some shoot system. Stage 3 is when rooting. Remember, stage 1, callus. Stage 2, you start to have the weird shapes, the globular, the heart shape, torpedo shape. The callus starts to have those clumps on it. Stage 2 is like that stage. You kind of start to have the shoot system. Stage 4, you have, or stage 3, you have rooting, and stage 4 is when you have the plant in the magenta box or wherever, and you can just pluck it outside.
How hard and how expensive is it to get the ingredients?
You can order it on Amazon for 20 bucks. It is not expensive at all. Or you can just make your stock solutions a lot cheaper. It's gonna be overall more expensive, but you can make a lot more. And again, a lot of people use just regular sucrose. We use specifically like research grade, so we have to get the high purity stuff. For production purposes, you're not gonna get the most expensive, like this clean sucrose. You're not gonna get the best agar. You can get gelatin, like, you know, you can see that a lot of like productions, it's a lot lower grade material because they just like,
Maybe like you're propagating for, let's say, like purposes versus research purposes.
yes, there is a huge difference because we need to produce repeatable data, and it has to be a lot more controlled than if you are just doing something for propagation purposes. And if one batch maybe does not perform the best for whatever reason, you can be like, as long as it's not dead, you can use it. Right? Like if you guys work at a nursery or something, and some plants are a little bit shorter, grow a little bit, you're like, oh well, you know.
How often do nurseries do this?
So I only know a few places that actually had their own program. Kagawa greenhouses did their own. I know, but they stopped doing it just because of their cost. They didn't really see the benefit of it, but you know, you could technically, and it's like not season dependent. The costs or concerns with micropropagation, contamination, you can also really easily mislabel stuff if you're not careful. From callus, I can tell if that's a corn callus or tobacco callus. You're only gonna see it once you actually start to get the shoot system and overproduction. So if you produce way too much, you're gonna drop the price real quick and it's not gonna be viable. So you wanna make sure that it's economical. You don't wanna push out plants 24/7. And high cost. relatively high cost setting up. So, depending, like I said, you can get fairly like I've seen laminal flow hoods online, $500 used. Not that bad.
You
Do
said
you-
you could use it instead of.
Pressure cooker,
Pressure
same
cooker,
thing, high pressure, high heat. You don't necessarily need the autoclave. Growth chamber, you don't really need it. We need it for research purposes, production purposes, as long as you can keep we actually keep at 26 degrees Celsius, which is about 75-ish. So as long as you can keep the temperature 75 degrees and give it light, it's
You
gonna.
included it as germ chamber then?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Basically just like a.
Yeah, as long as you can control the temperature, you wanna be careful not to cook it because it's a greenhouse in a greenhouse. That's the only thing. So you don't wanna leave it in the greenhouse.
What about, I forgot the tool that you use to stir, constantly stir while you are,
The stirring rod?
is it just a stirring thing? It doesn't
Stirring,
do,
no.
it doesn't
That was
like
the
heat up or
magnet on it?
anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a magnet in it.
It just stirs.
It is. You can buy a heating plate and the stirring rod on used for $50. Like these are not that expensive, especially if you are getting production grade, not research grade. The prices drop dramatically.
Yeah, and then you guys distill twice, which he said it's literally for research, you don't have to
Yeah,
distill.
exactly. You can get the regular jug of water from, the DI water
Makes
from.
sense.
So basically, this is just tells you the number of micropropagation in the US. I'm not gonna go in there. And blueberry production and production of biobeads, like what kind of cool, a few cool stuff like propagation or definition of micro. So propagation is creating a large number of uniform copies in a short period of time in a completely controlled environment. Okay, basically that is it. I'm gonna let you guys have a 5-minute break. I think that is a completely reasonable thing to do, right? I think.
Yes.
I have a question, so you said. Hey, I don't wanna take a break.
Yes.